Gun control has been a prevalent issue in America since the founding of this country. There is a divide between those who claim the Second Amendment's right to bear arms and those who claim restricting gun policies would cut down on fatalities. Currently, about 61% of all gun deaths can be attributed to suicide, while 39% can be attributed to homicide. And this does actually account for less than 1% of all deaths in the nation, but these are easily preventable deaths determined by an instigator with a willful intention of harm directed towards someone. And while it does save less people, it also is a more convenient problem to solve, especially since the issue of violence and preventing people from killing each other or themselves is a much easier topic than, say, heart failure or cancer. The ease of the solution, especially when compared to other big threats to life, makes it an especially attractive option to politicians, not just in America, but also in other countries as well. And actually, the Second Amendment would be the most effective in alleviating this sort of problem, since the more extreme measures one takes to prevent a crime, the more extreme they'll try to fight back. So you can say Mexico. They've got some of the strictest gun control policies in the entire world, and yet they have about 118 gun-related deaths per million, and that translates to roughly 15th actually among the world. And America, by comparison, has only about 20th proportionally. So stricter gun policies does not translate to less death, as one might think. You see, the problem here is not necessarily the guns themselves, how people get the guns, but rather why they get the guns. If we can solve the problem at its root, then we have the whole issue covered. Basically, I think if I was elected, I would have more money attributed to mental health care and not towards gun policies, background checks, and those sorts of things, because clearly they haven't gotten very far. And actually, the biggest piece of legislation surrounding background checks was implemented in 1994 with the Brady Handgun Violation Prevention Act. But studies show that didn't even do that much. There was actually a current act in Congress which was proposed by Mike Thompson, reinforcing background checks and prohibiting firearm transfer without background checks. So this is currently under review by the 116th Congress, and yes, I suppose that's all. But also, if we tackle gun control at its root, then it all comes down to mental health or a sort of upbringing. So if we can solve that issue, then we wouldn't have gun control to worry about. People wouldn't be lashing out at themselves or at others. So I know there's no small feat, but there's a lot of lives to save here. And either way, a life's a life.
And you evaluate them and you say, yes, they have mental illness. That's true, but that is not the same thing as saying of the huge population of people who have some kind of mental illness, that those people are going to be committing crimes. I mean, there was the National Institute of Mental Health Epidemiologic Catchment Area study, with 17,803 subjects in 5 communities, and they were studied for rates of psychiatric disorder, and they got data on violence on 7,000 subjects. They defined violence as using a weapon in a fight, engaging in a fight that came to blows with other than a partner or spouse. So they eliminated domestic violence, from the statistics. And what they found was that patients with serious mental illness, schizophrenia, major depression, bipolar disorder, were 2 to 3 times as likely as people without such an illness to be violent. And what that meant is that the lifetime prevalence of violence among people with these illnesses was 16%, compared to 7% among people without mental illness. So it's certainly more. And if you add substance abuse to it.
The problem is that they do not function properly or are not properly enforced. In 1968, when Congress passed the Gun Control Act, it made a judgment that certain categories of individuals, termed prohibited persons, should not be allowed to purchase or possess handguns or long guns because of the high risk that they would later use these firearms to commit crimes. Prohibited persons include convicted felons, illegal aliens, and individuals with serious mental health issues. The problem was that it was difficult to determine which individuals fell into these categories when they walked into a gun dealer to buy a gun. In 1993, Congress passed the Brady Act with the goal of instantly checking a prospective handgun